Welcome, 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 everyone. Let's see, we have a few folks rolling in. We're about 37 people. Welcome to this PowerCat AI webinar, sponsored obviously by PowerCat. No plug there that we won't take. But good morning. Hopefully, everyone's going to continue to roll in. We're going to get started right on time with a couple of introductions. So if you are happy and you know it, a little bit of interactivity, let me see you raise your hand. Can I get emoji? Okay. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, thank you, John. I love to see it. All right. Well, let's continue. Who are we? Um, we'll move along with some quick intros. My name is Lanice Lancy. I'm a product manager here on the PowerCat Scale team, but I'm just facilitating today. This is all about the AI webinar hosted by Dieter. Dieter will say hello. Quick intro there, Dieter. Want to say hello to everyone?
Yeah. Hello. I'm Dieter. I'm also a program manager in the PowerCat team, but I'm not in the Scale team. I'm more a solution architect in the Copilot Studio team. So I'm working day in day out with some strategic customers globally, making them successful on Copilot Studio.
And Dwayne. Thank you, Dieter. Say hello to the folks.
Hey everyone, Dwayne Robinson, Principal Copilot Architect in PowerCat organization, kind of specializing in Copilot Studio. Look forward to you guys getting something out of this today.
Thank you. So in this webinar, we will see basically how and when to use Copilot Studio. So we have a very packed agenda. So first of all, we will see how AI is transforming your business processes. So how AI has an impact on how we look at processes and how we interact with our processes. Then we're going to have a look at which tools do we have in our tool belt, which tools do we have in our Microsoft platform that can assist in building these AI agents. And then we'll also have some proof from our customers that show the impact of those AI agents in their organizations. And then I guess the most important part, the thing that we're all looking forward to is Dwayne that will demonstrate a couple of scenarios, demos on how to use Microsoft Copilot Studio. And then, like Lanice already mentioned, at the end we will have also hopefully some time left for some quick Q&A. So, with this said, if we look at our customers, then we already see that they have implemented some amazing AI agents. AI agents basically in whatever department or team that you have within your organization, there are so many use cases, so many opportunities to get those agents in your processes. For example, if you're in customer service and you want to have an external facing agent that supports your customers on customer inquiries, you can also have an internal facing agent in customer service that is going to help your customer service engineers answering questions, or maybe you can make that also an autonomous agent so that the agent is able to answer those questions autonomously without having a service engineer in between. But you can also have a sales agent, a lead generation agent that is going to create your opportunities, your leads in Salesforce. You can also have an HR agent for employee onboarding, or having an agent that assists in creating learning plans and development plans for your employees, or in IT context, where you have an IT agent explaining all the different procedures and processes that you have internally to, for example, order a new device, or that just explains the policy on getting a new environment and so on. So basically, what you see is that there are so many use cases that are available cross industry, cross department, where you can have an AI agent supporting your processes. I'm pretty sure that when you just sit down for half an hour and think about your processes, I'm pretty sure that you will come up with some excellent scenarios that you can transform in AI agents. So this gives another issue, because you have that many scenarios that you can transform in AI agents, but how would you prioritize those use cases? Where to start exactly? So to help you, we have three questions that you can ask yourself. So first of all, we recommend that you clearly describe the problem or the inefficiency that you want to solve. That you also look at which are the stakeholders, which are the teams that will benefit from your solution, and then also clearly describe what are your success criteria for this agent. And suppose let's take that customer service example again. Your success criteria could be that I want to reduce the service tickets by 50%, something like that. Or in an HR context, I want to increase the customer satisfaction of my employees. Another question that you can ask yourself to prioritize those use cases is to identify which area that probably will have the highest potential for impact when you're introducing AI agents. For example, maybe your customer service desk is just overload with tickets. So then I would advise to have a look at the processes in customer service desk, or maybe you just have a lot of unhappy employees about all the administration that they need to do. So then let's have a look at some HR processes. And so that you immediately get a huge impact by introducing those agents. And then the third question that you could ask yourself is, do I have the necessary data, structured data, documents that will fuel your agent with all the necessary knowledge that you will need to answer questions about FAQ documents and so on. So make sure that you have access to that data and that you can use that data and that you're also allowed to use that data in your agents. And then also have the buy-in from your leaders, because AI is still very new, very early for a lot of organizations. So the chance that you will need to have a feature that requires some additional improvement, some additional approvals is high. And so you need to have buy-in from your leadership so that you can enable those features, and that you don't need to look for workarounds and so on. And so these are just a couple of questions that could help you prioritize those use cases. And once you have prioritized them, then we can have a look at which tool are we going to use to implement those use cases. So our vision for Microsoft is that we want to have a Copilot for every employee and an agent for every business process. And an employee, a user, will interact with Microsoft 365 Copilot, and then Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is available as a standalone tool in your Windows, or within all the Microsoft applications in your Outlook, in PowerPoint, in Word, you have Copilot available. And then you can ask questions like summarize my last emails, or give me the latest updates on this particular document. And then as a user, you also have the ability to extend your Microsoft Copilot agents. So, for example, when you ground your agent in specific data, for example, you have a policy document and you want to create an agent specifically for that policy document, and then you can extend the Microsoft 365 Copilot and by creating what we call a declarative agent, and that's then also available within your Microsoft 365 Copilot. And then you have the more when you have a more complex example, or when you want to have more flexibility, more also more governance, and then you can use Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio then to create all of those custom agents. And then you can also service those custom agents in your Microsoft 365 Copilot, so that you have that single pane where you can access all those agents. And that's also something that we will see in one of the demos of Dwayne later on. So, and then what kind of so now we know which tool we want to use, but what kind of agents can we create with Copilot Studio? So if we look at all of those use cases from our customers, then we can identify them in three main buckets. So we have those rather easy, simple scenarios, and a lot of customers start with these particular use cases, which we call retrieval agents. Retrieval agents are agents that you just ground in specific enterprise data. It can be a policy document, can be some structured data in a SQL or in a Dataverse table. And so, but you ground your agent on that data, and then you can ask questions about that particular data. And so, very easy, very straightforward. And then the next bucket is our task agents. The task agents are agents where you allow the agent to perform a task on your behalf. It can be, for example, I want to allow the agent to create a Salesforce opportunity or the Salesforce customer in my Salesforce environment. And you can, because we have so many connectors available for so many applications, you have a wide variety of activities that you can add in your agents. And then the third bucket is where you have the more advanced agents that are more the autonomous agents. They are running completely in the background. Are listening to various events that happen. For example, an email that arrives, or a Salesforce ticket that is being created, and that will trigger your autonomous agent, and then your agent will then come up with a plan based on all the knowledge that it has, all the actions that have been configured in that agent, and then will create a plan, and then we'll execute also that plan accordingly, and then and so that all running in the background. And so that are the three main buckets that we see. And then if we have a look at some actual use cases for those different buckets, and then for example, if we take the IT help desk agent, so that's a retrieval agent where you just ground your agent on top of an FAQ document, and then you can ask questions like, how do I connect to the corporate network? But then you can also have a retrieval agent where you're going to connect to an external system, like for example your project management system, and then you can ask questions like, for example, what's the status of this project and what's the remaining budget, and then it will get that information from your target system. And then you can also let that agent also do some more stuff on your behalf. For example, like when you have a device refresh agent, then you can allow the agent to create an order in SAP, for example. And then you can build towards the more advanced, where you have, for example, a customer service agent that is then going to run autonomously in the background, resolving tickets based on the knowledge that we have configured, based on the connections with, for example, our ServiceNow system and so on. So many different options, different agents that we can build. But also from a creator perspective, so you also have different options. So it doesn't matter if you have coding skills or not. So if you're just a business user, then you can start with the agent builder in Copilot Studio to just extend those Microsoft 365 Copilots, just ground that with your data, with some documents from SharePoint, and then you're good to go. So very easy. But if you're a bit more advanced, you're and you have some knowledge about Copilot Studio, then you can easily also create. Without any coding skills, you can create your agents in Copilot Studio. And then if you're really a pro dev and you want to develop certain agents, then you can also use a combination of Copilot Studio together with Azure AI Foundry, for example, or as other AI Azure functions like Azure AI Search and so on. So also on this aspect, from a creative perspective, you have that full range, no matter where you are in the journey. So now that we have our tool, we have our use case, we have our tool. So now, how do we create an agent in Copilot Studio? So typically, you start with creating your agent. Various options that you have available. So either you can start from a blank canvas. You can also start from an existing template. There are several templates that are already available that you just can tweak to your needs, or you just can describe what your agent should do, and that will create your agent. And then what you're typically going to do in your agent is, especially when you have an autonomous agent, you're going to add one or more triggers. Trigger can be an email, can be an event in Salesforce, can be an event in Dataverse. And so your agent is then going to listen to those events and is then going to trigger whenever that event happens. Then the next thing that we're going to add in our agent is knowledge. Knowledge can be websites, internal websites, public websites, can be files in SharePoint. You can also, for example, upload PDF documents in the agent itself. You can also connect to Dataverse. You can connect to Fabric. So many connectors are also available to connect your data as knowledge in your agent, and then your agent will be able to reason over this data that you configure. The next thing that we also have in Copilot Studio is what we call topics. Topics will allow you to have a very prescribed path that you want to use to navigate your end user through a conversation. And so where you explicitly want to have full control on what questions will be asked, what should be the response, the options for the responses that will be given to the user, and how to interact on those responses. And so that's a very defined script where there's and that's something that you can use with topics. And then the last thing that you can add in your Copilot Studio agent is actions. And so actions can be connecting to one of the thousands of connectors that we have available that connects to huge amount of external applications that you have available, but can also be connecting to, for example, like a Cloudflow, where you're going to use a custom prompt, where we're just going to inject a specific prompt in your agent. So once you have configured all of those different aspects, your agent is ready. You're going to publish that agent, and then you're going to make that agent available in one of the channels that we have available in Copilot Studio. And so you can deploy your agent, for example, to your public website if it's an external facing agent. But you can also publish that to Teams or Microsoft 365 Copilot, so that when it's an internal agent. But you can also use that in connected your agent to a customer engagement hub like Genesys or Dynamics 365 Customer Service or Salesforce, so that you can have a handoff from your agent to a physical agent. So many options that are available to make your agents available in those different channels. Once that agent is available, you also want to monitor what is happening with your agent to make sure that you have addressed all the different scenarios. If there's maybe some topic that is not being hit correctly or whatever, so that you're going to monitor your agent and then improve the agent where needed. And you have that all those built-in analytics in also in the tool. And then as the last step, you can also extend with a lot of ProDev capabilities. So you can also connect to Azure AI Foundry or use Azure AI Search or use some custom Azure AI models or connect with an Azure function or whatever. So many options also exist to extend towards ProDev capabilities. So that's typically at the cycle to build your agent. But also let's take a moment to see what customers are actually saying about Copilot Studio. What do they specifically love about Copilot Studio? And so especially at the time to market. It's a SaaS platform, so there's no need to install anything on your machine. It also goes very quickly, and you can have an agent in a couple of weeks deployed to your production environment. What we also see is that with Copilot Studio, you can have huge ROI and cost savings, even for some very simple use cases where you're just listening to a mailbox and then based on that, the content of that email, doing some actions. Is a very simple agent, but can already have a huge impact and a huge value within your organization. It's also a very easy tool to work with. So it's also very easy to add knowledge, different knowledge sources in Copilot Studio. You don't need to configure anything additionally or whatsoever. Just add the knowledge in your agent, and Copilot Studio will take care of it. It's also very easy to start building with it. So it's very straightforward. Like I said, it just can describe your agent, and then you will be guided through a process to create that agent, and so without any coding skills or whatsoever. And then also, you also have the ability to use let's say the old and the new world, the new world with all the AI features and the generative answers and so on. But you also have those topics for the more traditional approach, where you have really a script that you want to follow and that you want to guide your users through that conversation. And since Copilot Studio is also a part of the Power Platform, and there are also a lot of governance controls that are out of the box available. If you can configure who should have access to a certain agent and who should be able to make changes to that agent, or who should what channels should be available in that agent, or what connectors should be available. And so a lot of governance controls are just out of the box already available, and that allow you to do a lot of configurations. So, and then if we map that to some actual value that we see from our customers, and these are just a couple of examples. But for example, if you look at HP, HP has an agent that solves over 1.7 million customer inquiries per month. So that a huge amount of messages that are flown through the Copilot Studio agent. So really shows that we can take that huge amount of messages. PayPal reduced their IT and HR help desk with 40%, and this with less than 6 weeks of development. And so that really shows that it can go really fast, and you can really show value very early in the journey. Another example, Rabobank. Rabobank has 80,000 calls per month, and they were able to reduce 50% of those calls towards the contact center. So that a huge amount of calls that don't come to the actual service desk engineers anymore. Pets at Home created a fraud detection agent and saved $1 million in costs. So that's also a huge amount. And then, like I say, there are many other customers that also have a huge amount of value by just using those agents. With this said, I would transfer to Dwayne for some demos.
Cool. Thanks, Dieter. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go first into taking a look at the retrieval scenario and also the task-based scenario. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and Dieter, I'll let you know when to take it back. And everybody give me thumbs up if you can see the screen on your side.
Yep, I see it.
Yep, excellent. So where we're going to start today is we're going to start with a scenario. And the scenario that I have right here is that I wanted to build something fun to kind of play with for you guys. So what I did is I have, maybe an unhealthy obsession with Porsches. So what I decided to do is use it as an example here of being able to go and answer questions about the Porsche 911 models and things of that nature. And we decided to actually make this a little bit more intriguing in the fact that we wanted to make it where we could use a couple of different things using topics, actions, and knowledge. But let's first take a look at a simple example of retrieval. And in this case, what we're going to focus in on is this knowledge where we've got a brochure and the model information that's been uploaded into Dataverse for it. And so when I come in and I want to ask certain questions, like I can come in here and we can ask a question about, what colors does it come in? And you're going to see that it understands what it is that I'm talking about because it understands the context of what it specifically is. But then it's going to go and it's going to pull in some knowledge that's available to it and try to find an answer to this particular question. So what you're going to see is it comes back and it actually answers this question with things about exterior colors and interior colors and things of that nature. But I can even ask follow-up questions like, can you get a 4S and red interior? Now, understand that it doesn't necessarily have to be exact words. So you'll see here, it's actually understanding that I'm talking about the 4S and it's coming back and telling me, oh, actually, yeah, you can get the Bordeaux red leather and things of this nature. So it understood that what I'm trying to ask and actually get this information out of these brochures. So the other part of this, and this is an example of just retrieval, and retrieval is pretty simplistic in the way it works. But when we look at something more advanced, we can have things like topics, where topics would allow me to be able to come in and be able to say, oh, I want to collect some information to get from the person to be able to get their information to request an info package. But we also have this, which is what we call an action. And in this one, what I actually went out and did is I built a API that will let you check the status of a order for your Porsche. And if you'll give it the information about the order number, and you can see here's the description of that, and you'll see on the outputs, it's going to give me all kinds of information about the thing that I've ordered. Now, just to show you this in action, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually ask a couple of questions that are more in the task-oriented side. So now we're moving to that middle tier that Dieter talked about. And I'm going to say something to it such as, I would like to get an info packet. Now, when I say that I want to get an info packet from it, what's happening on the back end is it's trying to figure out, well, what would be the example of being able to do that? Or what is the tool that I have to do it? And you'll see that it called the request info packet and it's asking me for my name. Now, with the beauty of slot filling, I'm actually going to go ahead and answer all the questions it was going to ask me. And you'll see it populate everything in, and we've got the answer here. Now, that's great, but when we want to start interacting with APIs and not just doing custom topics, I can also say something like, what is the status of my order? Now, when I ask what the status of my order is, you're going to notice that the generative AI model sees that it needs an input of an order number. And you'll see that it asks me for the order number. So because I didn't provide that, it automatically understands that it needs to ask me for this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in my fake order number here for my new 911. And voila, you can see here, apparently I've ordered a Carrera 4S. And you can see all the information about it here that it's all been returned. Now, what I can also do is I can ask specific questions about it. I can say, where is my order being delivered and when is it going to be there? And notice I ask these follow-up questions and it's going to tell me it's going to be delivered at Porsche of Nashville and here's the date that it's going to be delivered. And again, it's getting all of this from this connector that we have. But because of the fact that we can maintain the context of the whole conversation, I can ask something like, what were the interior trim color options for my model? And know that we're talking about the Carrera 4S because that's the one I had. So you can see it goes back into the knowledge and actually figures out what were the trim options for the Carrera 4S. So this is just a great example of how we can use Copilot Studio to both do retrieval and task oriented capabilities. And so this is really sort of the key capabilities of Copilot Studio that's going to be a little bit more advanced than what we're going to talk about in the next stage. So Dieter, if you want to bring back up the slides.
Yep. Sure. Do you want to show first the demo on making that available in Microsoft 365 or?
No, we'll go to that in the next section. So if we'll just go ahead and bring up this. So the main thing that I wanted you to be able to see here is that you can ask questions into the question system and we'll get those answered and I'll answer how you did that. So now, if we take a look at the key takeaways of what we saw here, you're seeing that information workers can go out and build agents using a simple description. You can see that we grounded it inside of enterprise data and know that we also, I think, Dieter, we're too far in advance. I think we're on the ones that are takeaways for the next one. Here, I can show my screen if it helps.
No, yeah.
Okay. And what I would tell you guys is just be aware that it's included. We do include, if you are in 365 Copilot, know that you are having the ability inside of the M365 Copilot to be able to use both teams. So the next thing I want to show you guys is going to be the M365 Copilot extensibility capabilities that come in. So we kind of talked about that at the very end just a second ago about how it can be included as part of your M365 Copilot. But what I want to show you is I want to go into what does that mean and how does this sort of work. So what I wanted to show you is I'm going to show you a couple of things. One is that this is the M365 Copilot, and you can come in and create an agent on the right rail. And this is the M365 Copilot Studio inline builder experience that lets you build what we would refer to as like a declarative Copilot or a Copilot agent. That is basically, you can come in and you could use something like, I could say, I want to use this career coach as a start. And you can go into configure and you can adjust your icon and the descriptions and the instructions that you want it to use to follow just right here. You can also come in and browse for knowledge and use knowledge that's in the actual Office 365 graph. And you can even see, like, I can go into operations and just say, all I want for this one is the human resources data that's inside of it. You'll also see that you can choose whether you want to use web search, and I encourage you guys to look at these little icons here. They're there to help you understand what each of these things do. So this will add additional web content. You'll even see code interpreter, which lets you go in and do interpreting and doing things like math problems. And then you even have an image generator if you want it to be able to do that. And if you notice down here, we've got all these starter prompts, and you'll see the starter prompts over here on the right. So I can say something like networking strategies or things like that. And what it's going to do is you can test this thing before you actually create it. And you can see here it's answering the question. It's created some input for us to be able to see what we can actually do with this particular thing. And I could just hit create right here, and then it would automatically add it to that right rail for me, for myself, and then I could decide to share it with my organization. Now, you'll notice that some of the things about this is that we don't really have the ability to access APIs or do things like that. And that's where we go into Copilot Studio again. And when we look at this, and we'll play with that same one we were just dealing with before, which is this 911 manual. And if you notice, as you scroll further down inside of Copilot Studio, you'll see starter prompts, just like you saw before. And those starter prompts are going to give you the ability to interact and make part of what you can do with the channels and be able to make it where I can now share this directly into M365 Copilot by going into the channel for Teams and M365 Copilot. You just check this box, and then you can say availability options, and you can see here that I've actually shared it with everyone in my org, and I even made it available in the App Store. Now, that can take some time for it to do it. It takes a little while for it to populate and get your admin approvals and all those type of things. But once you've done this, what will happen is it'll become available in the Get Agent section, so that way you could go in here and find it in your own corporate library of different ones. And you can see right here that I've actually already got this 911 manual one published, and it's available. And it's the same one that we've been playing with before. And if I ask about color options and things like this, you're going to see that it's going to go out and it's going to connect to that agent that we built inside of Copilot Studio that is a full agent. And now keep in mind that the information that was stored and where it's getting this answer is not inside the graph. That was actually uploaded into Dataverse to get to all this information. Now, the other thing to be aware of is if you're not familiar with M365 Copilot's capabilities, you can also call out the specific agent that you're wanting to talk to, and you can ask it other questions and directly directed to that particular agent. And so in this case, I can actually ask a question about that order that we were talking about before. And you can see I actually provided the order number in. So we'll see slot filling take place where it doesn't have to ask me a follow-up question. It's just going to answer the question. And you can see I got the answer about that order that we had before. Now that was calling a backend API and using actions and everything. So now with the power of using Copilot Studio and publishing to the M365 Copilot as a channel, I have the ability now to bring these advanced capabilities and dynamic chaining and all the greatness that comes within Copilot Studio directly into the M365 Copilot as a Copilot agent, and not just doing declarative Copilot. So that's a major, huge improvement in things that we are able to do. And so Dieter, let's go back over, and I think we've got some polls that we wanted to do as well. And let's do the takeaways first here. So what we're going to talk, if you can see, what we just saw is that I could easily go extend agents across any channel using Copilot Studio. You could see that the agents can do more and answer questions. They can act on your behalf. They can interact with line of business applications. You can see that there are over 1,500 connectors out of the box for your agent. And all of these things are able to be brought into the M365 Copilot capabilities as well. And so just be aware that this is really sort of key capabilities that I wanted to call out for you guys. So I think did we have a poll here? Oh, no, we're going to jump right into autonomous agents. So with autonomous agents is a different concept, guys, where what we're doing there is it is not the same as business process automation, because what we're going to be able to do is proactive and independent solutions that are going to become very adaptive in the way that they work. So it's not a matter of if this, then that type of scenario. Matter of fact, Dieter, if you'll go to the next slide, I want to kind of showcase what we're talking about and what I mean by this. So when we talk about a declarative or a business process automation, when you're dealing with business process automation, what happens is it goes through the same steps every single time, every time you run it. A business process automation is actually a lot of times a piece of an autonomous agent, because an autonomous agent can actually go through and do a lot of different things. Like it could actually make a decision based upon what it's getting or the information provided as the input, to decide to run one way one time and run a different way a different time. And then maybe there's a human in the middle that needs to do something. And then based upon that, it will go do what it needs to do. The way I like to explain this is, if you think about it in the terms of, imagine autonomous agent is you writing a job description, you going to a person and you saying, this is what your job is. This is how you do your job. Here are the tools that you have to do your job. Here is the information and like manuals and information that you're going to need to be able to do your job. And then, oh, by the way, this is when to do your job. When this happens, go do your job. And so what I'm going to do is, I think we're going to just jump into the demo here. And yeah, let me show you this part. So if we look at autonomous agents, and an autonomous agent, which this is an example of one, and in this case, what we're talking about is someone goes and builds this thing. We said, hey, what if someone wanted to book a cruise and they said, hey, I'm interested in booking a cruise, and they come to my website and fill out a form saying, I would like to get the latest specials. For me to do this in an effective way, what I want to do is I want to be able to say, here's the instructions of what I want you to do to be able to help out being able to figure this out. Now, I need to be able to turn on this generative orchestration, because generative orchestration is the lifeblood of an autonomous agent. So now, when you go and you look further down, I don't really have any additional topics, but I've got a whole bunch of different pieces of knowledge that I've given it, from deck plans to cruise itineraries, protocol, excursion guides, all of this stuff, so that it has all this knowledge about all the different offerings that we have. And then when we go into actions, which I like to kind of expand this a little bit for you to see, I can create a new lead in CRM. I can generate booking links out of Salesforce to be able to say, hey, I want to get a unique booking link, so when someone clicks through, I know that that's how they got that. And then we can also pull their booking history. We can go and also retrieve leads from CRM. We can send emails responses to them, and we can update the customer information as well inside of the CRM. And the beauty of this is that there's this new capability called a trigger. And you'll see here that when I talk about this trigger, it's going to say, when do you do your job? And when I do my job is when the actual form gets filled out. Now, you guys don't want to sit and watch me fill out a form. So luckily, we already have one that has been filled out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this off like this form was filled out by someone, and we're going to watch this thing work. So we're waiting for the form to get submitted. Now the form's submitted, it goes and pulls the leads from CRM. It got the booking history and everything. And then what it's doing now is it's looking at, oh, well, what is the different knowledge sources? What are the itineraries and things that I might want to recommend to this person based upon their booking history? And then once it gets done with that, it's then going to create the booking link for us. It's going to send an email with the information that it found, and then it's going to go into CRM and it's going to update the CRM record for us on the fly. Now, to see this actually work, the easiest way to see it is if we go into Outlook, and inside of Outlook, this is the email that we're sending out, and you'll actually see here's an example right here of one that just where it created the email and it sent everything out with the options. Now, the beauty of this is I could even go in, and we talked about triggers. I could even come in here and just add additional triggers and do something like email and say, when maybe they came back and replied to that email, and I need to monitor this inbox to be able to see, okay, when this thing came back in, maybe somebody replies back to it and says, hey, I actually would like to go to Hawaii this time. Do you have any specials for that? And then they can ask even more questions and be able to interact and all of those type of things. And they're doing it with this autonomous agent. And we could even potentially go into, okay, let's go through and do a full booking or be able to, and all of this interaction could be updating that CRM record on the back end so that you can see what's going on with this.
We really want to thank you all for joining this AI webinar, and hopefully you had an immersive experience in a short amount of time and fun along the way.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.